Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to the 2023 Podcastage Audio Gear Gift Guide. I've broken this video down into a couple of segments, and I will have those chapters in the timeline. Also, make sure to check the gift guides that I made during 2020 and 2022 because all of those still hold true. Without further ado, let's jump into the guide. Number 1, microphones for podcasters. First up, we have the Behringer XM8500. This costs about $25, and you are listening to it right now. It is an XLR and dynamic mic. That means you will need an XLR to XLR cable and an audio interface, so that will drive the price up. But even with that considered, the sound that you get out of this thing for this price, it doesn't make sense. So if you're on an extremely tight budget, the XM8500 is a great option. Next up for $60 is the Samson Q2U. This is an XLR and a USB dynamic mic. That means you can just buy this microphone, connect it to your computer, and start recording. Then down the road, when you want to upgrade to an audio interface, you don't need to replace the microphone because you also have that XLR output. So just getting started for beginners who don't know what route they want to go, this is a great option. And again, for the price, it sounds a lot better than it has any right to. Next up for $100 is the SE Electronics V7. This is another XLR dynamic microphone, so you will need that XLR to XLR cable, and you'll also need that audio interface. But for $100, this is one of my all-time favorite microphones. I just think it sounds fantastic, it performs well, and it holds its own against a bunch of legendary microphones around this price point. Fourth up, we have the Rode PodMic USB. This costs about $200, and as the name implies, this is a USB microphone, but it does also have an XLR output, so you can mix and match between those if you want to. But the big selling point here is over USB, you have some digital processing, so if I engage that, you can have some compression, you can have some noise gate, and you can have a little bit of EQ to sweeten the sound for your recording. And the final microphone for podcasters is the Shure MV7. This costs about $270, and again, this is an XLR and a USB dynamic mic, so you have those options on whether you want to use USB or if you want to run XLR, but just like the Rode, this has a big selling point over USB with a little bit of processing. You have the ability to add a little bit of EQ, you can have a limiter, and you can add a bit of compression to make sure your audio is level. Number 2, microphones for musicians. First up here costs $100, and it is one of the most popular microphones ever, the Shure SM57. This is a microphone that can be used on vocals, it can be used on guitar, it can be used on drums, it can be used on anything in the studio. So if you're looking for a microphone for a musician and you don't know what to get them, a 57 is a safe bet because they'll always find something to use it for. Secondly, we have the SE Electronics SE8. This goes for about $210, and this is a small diaphragm condenser. This is going to give you a much more realistic and natural sounding recording. So if you're looking for a mic for acoustic instruments where you want that natural sound, maybe if you want to overhead boom yourself indoors, or if you just want that more natural and realistic vocal sounding recording, this is a great sounding option, and you get a little bit of versatility with some high pass filters, a pad, and it has an interchangeable capsule in case you want the cardioid and the omni patterns. Thirdly, we have the Earthworks SR117, which costs about $200. This is a handheld condenser microphone, and the big selling point here is how flat the frequency response is. That makes it really easy to EQ to get the exact sound that you want. So if you're looking for a microphone for stage, for the studio, for podcasting, for anything really that you want to be able to EQ easily, this is a great option. And the final mic recommendation for musicians is the Rode NT1 5th Gen. This costs about $250, and this is another mic that is either XLR or USB. Over XLR, it functions just like any XLR microphone, but over USB, you have the option to record 32-bit floating point. That pretty much means that you're not able to distort the converters in this microphone while recording 32-bit float. But if you're recording 24-bit, you have access to some Rode processing again over USB only. You have that compressor, that noise gate, and a little bit of EQ if you want to burn that into your recording or if you want that processing for a voice call. Number 3, audio interfaces. First up, for $50, we have the M-Audio M-Track Solo. This gives you all of the basic functionality that you might need. You have an XLR quarter-inch mic or line-level input, an instrument input, a headphone output with direct zero-latency monitoring, unbalanced speaker outputs. It does have some outdated subpar preamps and A to D and D to A conversion, but for the price point, this is pretty bonkers, and it's a lot better than connecting an XLR mic directly to your motherboard. Secondly, I'm recommending an interface for podcasters. This is the Focusrite Vocaster 2. It costs between $150 and $250. It has a couple of microphone pre's, couple of headphone amps, physical mute buttons, ins and outs to send audio to your camera, capture audio over Bluetooth, and it has some very basic DSP processing functionality, which I did just engage, which allows you to add a bit of compression and a little bit of EQ if that's what you want. Thirdly, we have an interface that is great for podcasters who want a lot of control over their audio. Maybe you're a multi-computer live streamer, or maybe you just like to fiddle about and make mixes. This is the Lewitt Connect 6. This costs between $250 and $300. It has 2 microphone preamps. It has a bunch of I/O, including a second USB port to run to a second computer, and you also get DSP processing like an expander, you get a compressor, and you get EQ as well. It is just an incredibly full-featured interface if it fulfills your needs and you aren't trying to run instruments directly into this thing. Next, we have a teeny tiny interface, the Elgato Wave XLR. This costs about $160 and it packs a punch. It has a single XLR microphone input with 75 decibels of gain, a single 3.5 millimeter headphone output, so if you use speakers, this is not for you. It has a capacitive mute button, it has an 80 or a 120 Hz high pass filter, and most importantly, it has a feature called Clip Guard. So if I scream into the SM7B, I do not clip and I do not distort. That is just a super useful feature to have, especially if you're dynamic and just scream a lot. The final interface is the Universal Audio Volt 276. This goes for about $300, and the biggest feature here is the vintage preamp mode, which I just engaged, and the 76 style compressor, which I just turned on to the vocal mode. It certainly doesn't give you a bunch of control over that processing, but it gives you that basic sound of analog gear that is prohibitively expensive. Number 4 is accessories, and the first accessory is an XLR to XLR cable. This is the world's best XLR cable. That is the brand name. $35 for two 10-footers. They use Star Quad Canary cabling and Amphenol connectors. That is just fantastic for durability and for EMI and RFI rejection. So for a budget cable, this is absolutely fantastic. Next, we have a microphone quick release system from Gator Frameworks. This costs about $70 for a set of 3, and you can buy 5 more of the microphone adapters for about $40. I have been using these exclusively for maybe 2 or 2.5 years, and they have held up fantastically. They are easy to hook and unhook, and it is great to have so many of these microphone clips available. Third, we have the sexiest item on this list, a hygrometer/thermometer. This measures the temperature and the humidity of your environment. Humidity is the enemy of audio gear. It is the enemy of instruments. So if you have instruments, if you have audio equipment that you care about, get a hygrometer so you know what the environment is like and you know if there are any issues you need to be aware of. Fourth is an item that I recommend every single year, and it's something that I advocate that everybody use, a good set of earplugs. So get a good set of earplugs if you want to maintain a decent frequency response at concerts. If you don't care about that, if you just work in loud environments, just get a set of cheap $5 earplugs from the drugstore, and please protect your hearing because it is so important, and once it's gone, it's gone. Next is another item that I include every single year, and it is a flashlight. This is a Streamlight Micro Stream. It costs about $19. I drop stuff all the time. It falls under my desk. It's impossible to find because my eyes are wonky. Having a flashlight to illuminate stuff is incredibly important. It is incredibly useful. If you have a studio, if you have any dark corners, get a flashlight. You will find yourself using it. Next, I'm recommending a couple of pens and a notebook. I use the Parker Jotters in my studio, and those cost about $10 to $15. You could just use any notebook that you have available. It is just so useful to be able to document what your settings are if you're constantly changing them, if you have an idea for a song, if you have an idea for a video. Having the ability to jot that down and disconnect from your computer for a second is super essential, and I think good for your mental health. So I am recommending a pen and a notebook. The final accessory that I am recommending is some kind of water bottle with a straw top, so you don't have to unscrew the water bottle and risk spilling water or some kind of beverage all over your super expensive gear. As I mentioned, humidity is the enemy of audio equipment, but H2O is the full-on devil to audio equipment. You do not want liquids spilled over expensive gear. It will ruin that. So get a container to contain your beverages so you don't risk damaging all of your expensive stuff. There you go, that is my gear guide for 2023. I know it wasn't all-encompassing and I could have included so much more gear in here, but I wanted to keep it relatively concise. But let me know what you thought of my picks in the comments down below. I will talk to you later. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I love you. Bye-bye. Whoa, whoa, boop.